Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nick. For this week's video, we are going to continue my new series, which is #NickTheCritic, wherein I'm going to critique and improve your work. For this week's video, I am going to critique and improve this work, which is done by this person. So the reason why I picked this work to critique for this episode is because since we are in the beginning phase of this new series that I'm doing, I decided to tackle the basics first so that when we are going to critique more advanced lettering work in the next few episodes, the basic things will be covered. So again, everything that I'm going to share with you is not the only right way to improve a certain work. I will be basing the things that I'm going to share with you on my personal preference and my personal experience in doing this. So if you could see, I already have written down my notes for this specific lettering work. So the word that we'll be working on is this word gleaming. There are certain things about this work that I really want to improve on, or things that I want to correct, but there are also some things that I like about this work. First is I like the consistency of the angles. So if you can see, more or less the letters are in consistent angles with the exception of few certain strokes. Another thing I like about this is that the letters are perfectly aligned at the baseline, which gives it a clean look. And the flourishes are also well thought out, but we could improve on the execution of those. Okay, so those are some of the things that I like about this work. Now let's move on to critiquing this particular work. Okay, so the first thing I check is the consistency of the thickness. Since this is in a calligraphic style, we would expect this to follow certain rules of calligraphy. First is the thickness, wherein all downward strokes are supposed to be thick and all upward strokes are supposed to be thin. So if you could see from here, you could clearly see that that rule wasn't followed. So that is the first thing we want to improve. So what I did is I scanned this, I photocopied this sheet, and then tried to improve on just the pressures for the word. So immediately you could see, can you see it? Okay, immediately you could see the improvement of these two, from this to this, when you just correct the pressures. Okay. But the reason why I want to show you this work wherein I only improve the thickness is that by improving one characteristic of this lettering work, you'll already have a huge improvement. Okay, so that is the first thing we want to improve on. The second is the letter spacing. If you closely look at this lettering work, you'll notice that the letters seem like, or they feel like they are squished together. So what we want to do is give each letter some more space so that it'll be easier to look at. We don't want our lettering to look very claustrophobic. So the third thing we want to improve on is the letter height. Let me just grab my pencil. So if you notice, the baseline and the X height are being followed perfectly. But if you notice this letter L over here, it is taller than the rest of the letters. However, difference is just little. So it might be confusing to read. So we want to avoid that, and we want to make our lettering as readable as possible. So let us increase the height of this one, okay, so that you won't get confused with the letter I. Another thing we want to improve on is the curves. So when we're doing curves, or when we're writing curves, we want to make all of our curves look natural. So if you notice for this one, this upward curve over here, instead of just a smooth curve going up, you'll see that you went up. There's like a hump or a bump here at this portion. We want to avoid that. So that is one more thing we want to improve on for this specific work. So another important thing or characteristic we want to improve for this specific lettering work is its letter structure. So the letter structure is very, very important. Some of the things I'm going to share with you right now are just my personal preference. It is something that pleases my own eyes. So for some people, this may not necessarily be wrong, but for me, it is something that looks more pleasant to me. So first thing I would suggest is we want to avoid these loops over here at the letter A and the letter I and then the letter G. For me, those strokes may make your letters look confusing. It may look very distracting, so that is the reason why I want to remove these. But for the L, it's okay to retain it. Another reason is when we're going to add like the weight, it's going to look very confusing if we do it this way. However, if we do it in a different way, such as, let's just use this. So, for example, your letter A, you did something like this, right? So if we add thickness like this, it still doesn't look nice to me. And for me, I prefer to have this straight. It will also help it to be visually consistent in terms of angle with the other letters. Okay, so instead of doing a curve or a loop like that, what they'll do is just something straight. Yes, okay. Sometimes it's okay to do the loop, but for me, the only time I'm going to do the loop is if I'm going to give it like a small loop on top, okay? That way, it's still going to be readable. I mean, it's not going to make your letters very difficult to read if the loop is just small like that, okay? So I feel like, for me, that's the only time I'm going to use a loop. Okay. So another thing that I noticed is for the letter structure are your connecting strokes. So for the letter L, you connected it here, somewhere near the baseline. For the E, somewhere near the baseline. But for the A to the M, you went all the way up here. So that is one inconsistency that we could improve on, in my opinion. So we want everything to connect at this mid-level, just to make everything more clean and consistent, okay? So basically, those are the things that we want to improve on for the letter form of this specific work. Now let's talk about the flourishes, okay? So if you can see, there are nice flourishes here, here, and here. But in my opinion, there are still a lot of things on how we could improve specifically on the flourishes. First thing is the consistency and thickness. So we also want to follow the same rule for the lettering itself. So all upward strokes are supposed to be thin and all downward strokes are supposed to be thick. The reason why we want our flourishes to follow the same rules as your actual letters, so that since they are put together in one specific work, we want them to look like they belong together. Because if you have a very different style for your flourishes to your lettering, it may look like they're not meant to go together, and it's going to look like someone just placed that randomly there. So we want all of the elements of our lettering to look united. That's why you want to follow the same thickness rule for your flourishes to your lettering. That is the first thing we want to improve on the flourishes. And another thing about the flourishes we want to improve on is we want to have natural curves. So if you notice this, okay, the curves doesn't look very natural. Well, to me, this part, it looks squished. It looks like it has been squished. Okay, so you can see that this loop is very, very flat. I'm not saying that you can't create a flourish that looks flat, but the way this was done, it makes it look like it's squished a little bit, okay? So that's something we want to improve on. We want to curve this out a little bit more, okay? Curve this out a little bit more, something like this. Curve it out a little bit more, because you can see that this is almost straight, this curve or this line over here, and this as well. So you want to avoid mixing curve and straight lines, so we're doing a continuous stroke like this one. So those are the two things we want to improve on when it comes to the flourishes. Lastly, the composition even if this is just one word, we also have to think about the composition. We want everything to look balanced. We don't want it to be too heavy on one side. We don't want it to look too complicated on one side and too simple on the other. We want everything to be balanced. And one thing I like about this work that makes it balanced is that the G, the underlying flourish of the G, covers almost the entire word, okay? So this balances everything because it's not too heavy on just one side. Okay. So what I like about this is that since you have some heavy flourishes down here, you created something on top to balance this part over here, which is good, but we could slightly nudge this a little bit to the left because it feels too heavy on this side, okay? Aside from that, I think the composition will be okay once we improve these. So I am going to recreate this, and I am going to try to keep the details as close as possible so that it won't look like that I am recreating a totally different lettering, but rather I'm going to create something that is an improvement of this one. So let me grab a sheet of paper. So here is the before and the after, okay? So let me put this side by side. So the first thing we said that we want to improve was the consistency and line thickness. So earlier you could see that thick downward strokes and thin upward strokes have not been followed here for both the lettering and the flourish, but for my version I followed that rule. So another thing we want to improve on was the letter spacing. So earlier the letters looked squished, now it looks more evenly spaced and there's more room to breathe. It looks less claustrophobic compared to this one. And then the height of the letter L, so we increased it so that the height of the letter L is no longer close to the height of the letter I. So another thing we want to improve are the natural curves, so we don't have like a bump in a curve. You can see it's a smooth curve over here. So we also improved the letter structure. We eliminated the loop for the I, A, and G. And then for the connections, you can see that everything's connected at this level anymore. Unlike this one, you went up for the letter M, for the letter N, okay? So for the flourish, the consistency of thickness is also improved, and you have more natural curves. It doesn't look squished anymore. So we don't have these like lines or curves that look straight anymore. They are curved. Okay, so and the balance, so for this one it has been moved to the center a little bit more compared to this one, just to keep everything more balanced. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this week's Nick the Critic series. So if you want me to critique and improve your work, you could click the link in the description below wherein you could submit your work so that I'll be able to check them out and see if I could improve them for one of my episodes. Go give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Comment down below if you have any questions about anything that I shared today, and if you have any video suggestions, I would love to know more about them in the comments section. If you want to see a summary of everything that I've shared in this YouTube video, head over to my Instagram account because I am posting, or I have, by this time, I should have already posted a summary or a series of photos indicating the specific points to improve on. So if you found this to be very helpful to you, and if you have a friend who might find this helpful, I would really appreciate if you would share this video to them. I'm sure they'll appreciate that too. Or if you just want to share this video on other social media platforms, I would really appreciate that. So that's it. I hope to see you on my next video. Bye.